Thank you.
You're live.
All right, we are live, so we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, April 21st, and the first item, well, first of all, Judy McGinnis, JP Prego, and Mike Elliott. Oh, brain freeze there, like that. And you are?
Bond. James Bond.
So those are the members of the Pupil Services and Special Education Committee for, I guess, what, the last 2 months? Because next month we'll still do the two separate ones, right? Yes, they were already.
Yeah, we gotta talk about that day.
No
We're
problem.
we're not gonna be, neither of us will be
And
here.
we're not together.
What's the date of the meeting?
May 19th.
May 9th.
But
We'll talk
Sarah
about
and
it.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Sarah, yeah,
I don't think I'm on vacation. I think I'm on vacation the next week.
So yeah, so we will have 2 more meetings of this committee before we merge into one committee with curriculum and instruction.
Okay.
And we do have Dr. Andrea Farina, Carol Giblin here, Amy Coyle, and it looks like we have some special guests.
Yeah, so and for all that don't, I think it would be a good idea for them both to share who they are and what they do because they're not familiar with all of them.
Perfect.
So first we'll start with Shane.
Yep, I'm Shane Thrush, special ed teacher at the high school, on like 20-some years.
And what do you do at the high school?
I run the work program. I thought that was part of the presentation.
It is, but you don't necessarily.
He's not there yet, Shane.
So I'm in charge of our work program at the high school for our 18 to 21 population.
He also coaches our bocce.
And bocce coach, yes.
Yeah.
That they came in second place, I think,
Close, yeah.
for one of the teams. They did amazing.
They did great.
Yeah.
And then we have Chris Pemberlin who works with us from the MCIU, our transition coordinator. So I'm going to have him tell everything and please share how long we've been all working together.
So I'm the transition consultant from Montgomery County IU. One of the advantages for Upper Park is I also live up not too far from here. I've been working with the district now, I'm not going to say it, 7 years.
As long as I've been.
I know, but we've done a lot of great things in the last 7 years as it relates to transition. Some of the things that I've done, I've worked with teachers throughout the last 7 years on the transition aspects of IEPs. Some of the other things that we've done parent resource nights throughout calendar years. Within that, what some of that would look like, we've had different presenters, both online and also in person. We found out recently we've got a lot better attendance actually doing them online. It's really encouraged attendance. I think at our last one we had almost 30 people.
Yeah.
We've also, some of the things that I've worked in coordinating with the district on and provided support on, the district has done a lot of great things in the last 7 years with transition. Some of the things that they've done, they've brought a lot of work-based learning back, Shane's program and Andrea's support, and they've done a lot of great things within that program to bring students back to their community here in terms of a lot of the employment perspective. One of the difficult things that the district staff, Shane, teachers, the administrators have done with transition is Upper Perk is defined really by 3 boundaries of county services. A lot of school districts have to just deal with one county as it relates to service. Upper Perk has to deal with 2 from a residential boundary. Some of the students belong to the county of Montgomery County, other students belong to Berks County. The other aspect that really makes Upper Perk, where a lot of our teachers and the administrators have done a really great job as it relates to transition, is if we look at us right now here, you know, parents might go to Reading for service, parents might go to Norristown for service, parents might go over the hill to the Lehigh Valley for service, some parents might go to Quakertown for service. So it's really working on a lot of those transition aspects with students and families to find out where are you going for services, what are you looking at as it relates to transition as well. Even this relates to, if we look at community college, Shane and I have discussed this with some of our students from a career perspective. We have access to not only Montgomery Community College, but we have RAC, we also have access to Lehigh Carbon for some of those community college programs to look at, which each offers. So as we look at a lot of that, some of the things that we've got done, ongoing professional development with teachers, new teachers, Some of the initiatives that we've focused on really this year is called the Pathways to Graduation. At the middle school, really focusing on our students with emotional behavioral needs and really fostering that success as well. So it's been really a privilege, and we've done a lot of work in that area of transition.
Cool.
Thank you for coming to our meeting.
Yeah.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, so when I was like given transition coordinator role, so the first job was Dr. Free and I went to one of Chris's first meetings at the IU. So that seems like forever ago, but you know, Chris holds these meetings every month, and I mean now they're on Zoom, but I mean a lot of the ideas that we have brought back to Upper Perk are from, you know, he obviously provides all kinds of resources, but then they always do this like sharing around, so you hear from like 25 different schools what's new. So, you know, bocce came from those ideas, you know, a lot of things that we've incorporated here have, you know, been kind of taken from meetings that Chris has facilitated. So, and obviously he's our resource.
I've stolen a thing or two.
Right, yeah, right.
I think, you know, as we look at some of the things too from here that Dr. Farina and Shane and Carol have really pushed forward is how do we get to work sites? Rather than looking at one van or needing someone who has a CDL or a bus that requires the use of a CDL, having access to vans is not only allow for them to reach out to their community partners, but also used in the after-school activities as well, so you get multiple use. I think that's one thing I forgot to say earlier is the connections within the community, especially Shane, I'll let you talk about it in terms of the partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. You know, those type of things as well. Also reaching out to some of those other services, bringing them OVR, Monco Works Now, some of those youth work providers as well.
And then he also has, which he didn't mention there, but he works closely with us. So I look at, obviously, we have some reports that are due to the state, to the Bureau. We call that, you know, there's 2 indicators, and it's like really deals with transition, our post-school outcomes, and then there's another report for those kids that may be seniors, and then the following year, 1 year out of high school. And then we need to, when we work closely with our high school team, to contact and we follow up. You know, a lot of times we hope to get the student a year out when that's due. Sometimes we're communicating with the parent, and then all of that input from, and so at the Bureau, they're looking at what we did while they were in high school now, and a lot of those areas with transition, and a year out, where are these students? And then we get that report back, which they do across the state, that comes to us for what's called Indicator 13 and 14, dealing with those 2 pieces, and where we are with that. And he works closely with us through that process. So you can see that Chris works closely with Upper Perk.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
All right, and so it sounds like we're going to hear a lot more from you guys as we discuss the supports for our secondary transition. I do need to just go back and make sure we do the approval of the March 17th minutes.
So moved. Second.
All right, any questions or comments, concerns? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great. Now we will get into the nitty-gritty of what is transition planning for the IEP, what resources do we have available, and what happens after high school.
Okay, so we're all gonna talk a little bit about what this means for our kids, our students, our families, and the IEP, the special education students, and what does transition mean when they turn transition age, and what that needs to look like within the IEP to support the students after school age as they transition after high school or to adulthood. So we're going to break that up and share some pieces. We're going to start with, Andrea's going to jump in and talk about something new. I think for a lot of people it's known as Act 158 or Path to Graduation.
So, as the board has heard, because we presented the pathways to graduation previously, as we unpack the pathways, which Act 158 of 2018 sort of redefined the manner in which kids can earn that graduation credit. So we actually just talked about it in curriculum instruction. So there were 5 pathways for students, and as we started to peel away our understanding of each of the pathways, okay, thanks. So the first 2 were fairly consistent, and the board has seen this. You know, you can be proficient on all your keystones, or you can establish a composite score from those keystones, and that you get this check mark. Traditionally, the reason we introduce it in the pupil service meeting and relative to the secondary transition, because this pathway is an opportunity because the Keystone and Keystone Proficiency has generally been an obstacle for our learning support population. Achieving proficiency, even after remediation and retesting, and Shane is shaking his head because, I mean, kids could try and try as they may, but those tests sometimes were obstacles that kids could not overcome. It didn't mean they did poorly necessarily in the class, it just meant that they could not demonstrate proficiency on the Keystone. So as we've talked to the board, can you click? Thanks, Carol. There were 3 additional pathways, and I'm not going to go necessarily into all of them, but when we started to look at the pathway model and the kids who probably wouldn't be proficient is that learning support population. And then as we dug even further, especially those that would not be attending the Western Center. Those kids in the Western Center who would fall into that bucket of kids who may not be proficient definitely can achieve the NOCTI. Like, we felt really confident that that group of kids, they were hitting it out of the park, or not the NOCTI,
OSHA.
Thank you, OSHA. So that assessment, which is an alternate, so then we had to start sliding over to the other columns of pathways, and then the stuff in those 2 pathways represent new items for our learning support population, for our special ed population, and their transition. And so the reason we're trying to connect the dots here is because the pathways to graduation for all students are relevant. But we still have some obstacles and some hurdles with our special ed students in achieving several of those. And so the work that we do as a special ed department, as special ed case managers, and as program developers really has to be tailored around making sure the components within these graduation pathways are also present in kids' IEPs in their transition grid. And so I just want to frame that out for everyone, that this is relevant for special ed students. The IEP is the vehicle to memorialize the manner in which we will make sure that kids are achieving a graduation pathway. And then when we get a little deeper, you'll see where there's a lot of work program facets that align to an alternate pathway. So.
How soon do you put, because, you know, obviously you can have an IEP for a length of time, but how soon can you put these new pathways of graduation in there? Like, do you do it like?
That's such a great.
That is a great.
Yeah, that's a
Oh, really?
great springboard to the very next slide.
Oh, cool.
Which is, why is this important? This conversation important for secondary transition?
Yeah, and we'll talk about that, but just to sort of explain a little bit about that, since we have been working and our high school teachers have been working on this, and even our middle school, when we go over like when does this all start, they're inputting it now. So when the annual, how we say to them is, no, you don't need to, you may have 20 kids on your caseload, for example, that you need to do a revision to the IEP and input all of this on your annual IEP. So pretty much since, I would say March onward through the end of the school year, any of our students who have what's their annual IEP date, that is when our teachers are. So I've already discussed with a number of the learning support teachers at the high school, and they have input. So they're basically summarizing it. They're calling it Pathways to Graduation, Act 158, and it's under a certain section in the IEP where they're going to include a lot of these details and information. So if we know, for example, looking at 22, 23, and they're potentially looking at, one of these in particular, they're going to be talking about that to the family, to the student, but also then including that documentation in the IEP. And then it would be moving forward over the next school year. This would be included in all of them as well.
Okay, cool.
And fortunately, these things are pretty much, most of them are already in place, so it's just a matter of making sure you're documenting that, oh, we've done this before, so nobody's putting it in, so it's documented there.
Which I
Okay.
think in the special education world,
It's all about documentation, right?
if it's not in the paperwork, you can say all you want, that you did this or you did that, but that's why it's so critical that we do include it in the paperwork.
And one of the things too is just in terms of looking at some of the work that's already been done, building off some of the things from a college and career readiness standpoint, also having those middle school teachers, and that's something that I'm actually meeting next month in May with some of the middle school teachers, and having them start to consider that and having those conversations with parents about what potential outcomes might be. By identifying some of those potential outcomes, you then can look at those pathways for graduation as well. If we look at Upper Perk and some of the statistics that we get, Upper Perk has some of the best outcomes for students at the Western Center and the CT performance across the county. In terms of some of the other schools that I look at, you don't get the emphasis that's placed on CT programming that you do here in Upper Perk, which to me is, looking at somebody from a transition lens, is really awesome. So some of the data that we receive here is a lot better than some of our counterpart schools in Montgomery County.
Okay.
And
Cool.
so, as Chris said, he's meeting next week, so we do our one-to-one meetings at every building every month, and he's meeting one-on-one with the teachers there. Amy and I happen to have our group special ed meeting at the middle school today. So actually, these were some agenda items as well, and specifically really talking to more of our 7th and 8th grade teachers, but mainly our 8th, and some of their questions, and the same expectation as what the high school team will do with inputting in the IEP, it would occur then as well.
Okay.
So it is an ongoing sort of process and working with teachers, because this is new. The actual specifics of this is new, although what they're saying is, yes, for years and years, these things have already been occurring.
Right, like the Western Center, the students have taken the NOCTI. I actually didn't think that was a mistake when you said the NOCTI, because our students do so well with the NOCTI.
I know.
So I was like, oh yeah, NOCTI, yeah, they do so well.
Way to do it, right?
So,
Yeah.
but now we just have to get that data from the Western Center. Like before, we were like, great job, you passed the NOCTI. Now we have to put down, you passed the NOCTI on this date.
But,
So-
right, because part
Just-
of that also is, right, Shane, is that when they actually take the NOCTI and when we want to know. So if they go by the OSHA, those guidelines, typically you have all of that information which can support the pathway you're going in, versus the actual NOCTI assessment can be quite late your senior year.
Okay.
So, right, is there anything I'm missing with that? Yeah. That's why that other piece is important. So I'll jump back to this. So when and what is secondary transition? How does it start? So this is the piece, obviously, as we've already sort of talked about, is preparing our kids for after school age, which is when they graduate or age out from high school. When does it begin? It begins at age 14. And that also includes, so if a student is 13 and their annual IEP is in January and they're going to turn 14 the following September, because the IEP is an annual, at that IEP where they're still 13 but will be turning 14, all of this comes into play for all of our special ed kids. This is really starting that point of talking about graduation and career awareness, even though we might be in 7th or 8th grade. It actually does start at those points. It's really individually based on what we do, and so we'll talk a little bit more when we jump into like assessments, transition assessments that kids take each year, and what's the goal of that. The point is to talk about their preferences, their interests, and then also what a lot of times will come right out of there, it also will identify needs for us to support the student. And then these are just the different areas really that in the IEP that we want to make sure that we do focus on. And these are some of those, again, sort of sharing more information on that. These transition assessments that our teachers do provide, they do them annually, and then they'll include that input and information into the IEP, and you'll see also some of the needs there. And then goals that need to be applied, and we'll show you a picture of what it looks like in the IEP, like an actual transition grid. And then these are really those 3 areas that they look at, which is the education and the training piece, and then the employment area, and then independent living. And then how does those other pieces to that, like writing the goals, what would that be? Their courses of study that they need to take in high school. And so I think It's next, is it? Well, it starts to get into that piece. Okay. Any questions with that piece? We'll sort of dive into things.
Okay, cool.
I'm gonna wait, I have a couple questions, but you might answer them, so I'm gonna just wait.
Okay.
So as we look at transition planning in the IEP, these are some of the areas that we look at, education and training. The one nice thing, again, that I think Upper Park does really well, a lot of people focus on that education, but training is a really important part of that. And I think that emphasis here in Upper Park is really important, and you know, through the different training programs, especially looking at the CTE program, because you're producing a lot of kids who are going on, or youth, to high-paying careers because they haven't spent a fortune on a college and education. They got training, they might have continued that education and training, but really come out with high-paying careers and jobs that are in demand.
So you're talking about like Western Center training or something?
Western Center, but also preparing some of the kids' identification of other careers and opportunities as well. Employment, looking, you know, what jobs obviously of the future, independent living for some of our kids, especially with more complex needs, supporting them in that process. Agency involvement for students who might need supports through employment, the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. Shane and some of the teachers at the high school for the students who live in Montgomery County have also been really doing a great job of connecting with our youth workforce provider, which is a unit of Montgomery County Intermediate Unit called Monco Works Now. We've had a number of students who go through that and receive training, employment opportunities here within the Upper Park community. In terms of, then we look at trying to do a variety of different transition assessments to help those areas, and then we develop goals and activities and services to support that transition plan. And that's one of the areas that I can say over the last 7 years, we've really made a big stride working with our teachers through a professional development lens, and is not only meeting compliance, but really developing a well-rounded IEP that really enables the student to move from the high school environment to the post-secondary environment.
Chris, what is the statement of agency involvement? This comes to the documentation in the IEP that we do require.
The statement of agency involvement is we're informing students, stakeholders, parents of the various agencies that might be able to assist them in a post-secondary environment. So for some students, this is going to be Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, which is employment. For some students, this is county services that will allow them to access waiver funding. So this is example organizations, Service Access Management, the ARC Alliance, different organizations like that. I also mentioned Monco Works Now from a youth workforce perspective for students who might have a barrier or use a barrier to employment as well.
And the agency involved, that's where we're unique, because if you live in Green Lane area, you go to Norristown for your services for OVR. If you live from Green Lane to right around Pennsburg, you go to Allentown, and then everyone from Pennsburg up towards, like, going towards Bear Creek, you're going to Reading. So, so we do have 3 offices, so whenever someone asks, where do I go for services, we have to quickly, like, where's your address? And then that's what we direct them. And I know everyone has a different staffing, and so sometimes we're like, oh, you're lucky you're here, and then, so that's one of those complexities that makes us unique.
Yeah, no, that's...
So that's one of the ones that Chris mentioned earlier. That's a big one for us.
All right.
And obviously all logistically, geographically difficult to get to.
Yes, there's no one in Red Hill. There's no office in Red Hill.
Right.
So now with Zoom, it's much better. You know, a lot of people are able to get services that way.
Cool.
So that's helped things tremendously. But if you want the services, you have to travel to get them.
So from an assessment, there's different assessments. Carol covered some of those. Their strengths, interests, activities. We also look at academics, social, behavioral, vocational assessments, depending on essentially the student's needs. The nice part is there's other assessments that can be for undertaking depending on what a student might need as well, especially for some of our students who have more of a complex needs as well. Questions that I cover things?
We're looking at you, Judy.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay.
So throughout the course of this presentation, you've heard us refer to the transition grid of the IEP. This is in the student's IEP from day one. So if you're coming to us from early intervention, this is in your IEP. It doesn't pertain to you at 5 years old, but it pertains to you when in that year where you're turning 14 or you're 14. It's important that teachers don't just skip over this in IEPs, you know, even though that students are of transition age, just so that parents understand what this piece of the IEP is, so that as the child gets older, they understand, you know. So really we covered everything up to this point of how we fill in this transition grid. There's 3 sections: employment goals, employment and training, secondary and transition or training, employment, and then independent living. So those are the 3 different goals that are developed in this section of the IEP, and they're based on some of the assessments that Chris and Carol discussed. So within the student's IEP, based on all of the information that's gathered through those assessments, and also typically students they're always invited to attend this IEP meeting. So input from the student, the family, the team, along with the information through assessments, help the team to develop those goals. And they're measurable just as any other IEP goal is. You'll see up there we have employment goal in front of us, but again, there's 3 different transition goals that we would be looking at. Courses of study would be the courses that the students are taking, they're being instructed on throughout the school day. And then the services and activities are just different things that students might be participating in, or resources that are being provided to the students and parents for them to be able to work towards achieving those goals. And I don't know, Shane, if you want to maybe give some examples just with you writing IEPs of maybe like, I don't know, an employment goal and
Right, so
course of
sometimes
study.
offering those services that we talked about could go in here as something that's provided to the parent. So, you know, provided student with opportunity to access information for OVR services or something like that. Like that's like a one-time activity that could go into the grid. So you're documenting that, you know, in 9th grade, this family was offered information regarding these services. Now, they may or may not take us up on that option, so then we may have to look back, but at least we have a document that it's been provided, you know, 9th grade, maybe it was offered in 7th grade, or like a supports coordination service for someone that has a little more complex needs. So, you know, you're putting in here that these services have been offered and provided to families, so that way they can, you know, do with them as they wish.
Some other services and activities, so like say a student's looking to go on to college, you know, providing dates of, you know, college fairs, job fairs for students who are looking for employment after high school. So those could also be considered services or activities.
And I would say this is the place where we would try and capture. So traditionally, when you're looking at courses, you know, we would put kids in for their high school sequence. This is where something like personal finance, which is a course that allows you to achieve an alternative pathway, one of the components, that's, you know, as kids are moving from middle to high school, we're going to put that in to say every kid should take personal finance. That's setting them up for success in terms of course sequence in case they are not proficient on the Keystone. And so it's items, we're trying to parcel out the components of a graduation pathway and marry that to the transition. And when I was a high school special ed teacher, this used to be the part of the IEP that I would have kids, like when you think about your life in 10 years, what do you want it to be? Like, what do you want to do, you know? And then we used to back map it to make it fit into, because the transition grid is not like informed, changed for the 100 years that I was a special ed teacher. But, you know, and then we would try to create that relevance. Like, this document is actually your future. Like, here's this, especially this part, and here's how we're gonna like get you there, you know? And sometimes getting kids, especially in high school, to see the value of particularly that part of their IEP And then, you know, the goals are like, these are the skills that you need to work on and make your future a reality. And so, you know, obviously those are for kids with, not with complex needs, but, you know, our learning support population, which we have a large population of kids, you know, with learning disabilities. And so we want to use this as that catapult to their future and their transition out of high school.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. The only other thing I would add before we move on, and then Shane, feel free to add your piece as well. It could change because, you know, we're starting at 14, but, you know, some of our students remain in high school through 21. So that's a long period of time. So, you know, that's something too that we try to express during meetings with families and students. You know, this is where we're starting, but things could change along the course of the years.
So when you're setting up that course study, I think I heard you say it, Dr. Farina, that you try to map it out from this point until graduation. And then I'm assuming, like you said, sometimes it might take longer than anticipated or something like that.
But remember, the IEP is only an annual.
Right.
And it's fluid, so they can meet at any time to revise or change, and then the next year comes. So as she's mentioning, some things may change. They may need to look at something else. So it's not what's in here this school year in 9th grade necessarily.
Right.
We hope it changes, actually, like as far as some of the input and services and those things.
So that yearly review is when you can kind of look at it again and say,
Yeah,
well,
right.
this
And
didn't really work
revisions-
out, or we
Yeah.
need
Yep.
to actually advance things.
Yep. And revisions happen all of the time for a variety of reasons in IEPs. And students can graduate at 18, they can remain until they're 21, and those decisions can be made, you know, late in their, you know, their high school career. Go ahead, James.
So, and I think this is where, if you look at some of the district initiatives that they've undertaken from the transition perspective, one of the things that a few years ago you started was really the focus on executive functioning. So if we look at those executive skills, a lot of people used to think executive skills are just for kids with autism. Or looking at things, time management, task initiation, planning, organization. You know, at the high school level, you put in those things where, you know, you had a teacher who started to work on with kids of all disabilities, those type of skills. We've also done parent trainings around executive functioning within the last 16 months for that topic as well. Some of the other things as we look at from these activities, you know, the exploration at the Western Center, the work program, the various things that are now being offered from an activity standpoint as well. So it's looking at those activities that lead up. People invite those fairs, those activities, things in the classrooms, resumes, covers letters, different types of assessment that focus on vocational interest. So really it's something there we're looking at, here are these activities that are going to support the student's goal of X, Y, or Z in leading that map.
So as we sort of are continuing to progress through our presentation, Shane's going to dive a little bit deeper into employability education. I'm having a hard time speaking tonight. So you probably are aware of the high school programs that we have. We have life skills support, that's through 9 through 12, autistic support 9 through 12, MDS support 9 through 12, and then there's an 18 through 21 program. And then of course you've heard Shane and all of us talk multiple times about our work program. So Shane's going to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so just brief history. So the work program, you know, probably over 5 years ago, you know, we obviously were offering employability training, but we had to send students to Norristown. So students would take, Upper Perk students would take a van from our high school, go all the way to Norristown, work in some businesses down there, and then come all the way back. So they were on a van longer than they were in an employment site. So then, you know, a year after that or 2 years after that, we decided we're going to we found a local job coaching agency that we partnered with. So then they were finding sites locally for us, but again, we were putting our students on a bus, sending them with people that, you know, we knew obviously, but we, you know, didn't know well. Not we weren't fearful, but it's just
No one was in danger.
Right, yeah, no one was in danger, but
Everyone had their clearance.
yeah, right, yeah. So they're long graduated, but no, absolutely. But the problem was when we would go to meetings and we're going through all these documents and these grids and all that, we couldn't say that we've seen the student do anything. You know, so we were basically getting all our information secondhand. So if someone asked me how their child's doing there, all I could do was tell you what I was told. So it was, just, we were very disconnected.
Okay.
So then Dr. Farina came on board, and that's when we started to do it in-house. So that's when we started our in-house work program. So it started with me, myself, and a job coach, and then 2 job coaches. So that's how this has all come about to being the work program that's here at Upper Park now. So yeah, we're 5 years into it, and so I mean the groups that were in the last slide there, I mean they're kind of like our feeder system, you know. So it's technically like an 18 to 21 program, but you know there's frequent times because of what we're doing that I will have to take like you know some younger students for a site here or a site there to do different tasks or whatever we're doing. So, but yeah, so our role, you know, if the students come in, a work program students look like, if you've graduated, you know, you get to school by 7:15, you come in and you clock in, you know, with their little punch cards, and you know, the day starts. So they start from about 7:15 till about 2:20, and you know, you get a break in the van, and we eat together as a group, and then, but you know, it's going out to work sites. Usually we have 1 or 2 work sites in the morning with job coach or myself take students out, and some of those sites include, you know, we do the district mail. So obviously we're doing all this district mail stuff. We are partnered with businesses like Liberty Thrift, 2 locations for Liberty Thrift, Sanatoga and Quakertown. We have the Proper Brewing Company in Quakertown. We have the Pennsburg Thrift right here in Pennsburg, obviously. We have a huge partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, which Chris mentioned earlier, and that has helped us tremendously. We actually went there today, and so we help them out with all their fundraisers. So we help them like set up, you know, if they're setting up for an event. We do all their bag stuffing, so coming up for the job fair. So we picked up like 100 bags today that the students will be stuffing, and then we'll take it over. We'll help set up for that job fair at the Y. So, you know, our students will go over and they'll go to business owners as they pull up and offer to help like bring their stuff into their booth, help them carry things back and forth. And then afterwards, you know, they'll participate in the job fair as with the rest of the students. So let me think here. We have Logan's Heroes, if you know Logan's Heroes.
US Tape?
What's that?
US Tape?
US Tape, yes, US Tape is a newer one. US, go ahead. Oh, there we go.
Oh, we have there we go.
So there we go. So yeah, so
Good job.
again, now we label level 1, level 2, because everyone kind of gets some practice in it at a younger age. So it's like the minor leagues, you know. So
Yeah.
the younger students get a chance early on. So obviously, like Miss Bamford, Miss Willett, they have their programs and keeping you busy with that. So like that's doing stuff around the school, so helping out in the cafeteria. So every day they go to the cafeteria and they work out in there, like restocking for the next day. What else is on the in-house program? Well, we were doing this today, it's auto detailing, so we have a form that we give out to paraprofessional secretaries, maintenance staff, and they can decide like, from a menu of what would they like done to their car. So we detail their cars out back there by the garage area.
Is that coming over to the education?
You have to ask Doug if that water spigot works. I've offered it. If that spigot works,
I'll
we
bring
can do
my
it.
car to the
So-
high
Pretty sure the president of the school board.
And she can also.
So,
If you're
Yeah, right?
yeah, so, I mean, again, the reason the program works extremely well, because we have like Doug, who, you know, we worked with Doug, we had John before, now we have Doug, so he's been able to see what we can do, so they keep us in mind when certain things come up, you know?
That's awesome.
So,
They were solely responsible for the assistance in the high school library renovation.
yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yes.
It would not have been done
Yes.
without Shane and
Right.
his students.
And it was perfect because no one was in the building but us. We had the whole place to ourselves, so it was fantastic. So, yeah, those students took every book and every shelf out of that library, let the painters and the carpenters go in, and then they put every single book and shelf back in there.
Didn't they also build the computer desk?
And yeah, all those
for
crank
learning?
up, like all that PPE stuff, all those. So we did like 60 of those tables, you know, assembling all those things. So they're like, they're an unbelievable workforce. It's, I mean,
If I could also
it's-
just add to, like, you're talking about the high school level. 2 weeks ago, we got together as a department with the teachers talking about transition. And through that process, our middle school teachers were talking with high school teachers, trying to kind of model some of the things that are in the current high school program to sort of, so there's a lot of
To do with
collaboration
those
too.
at the
For
middle
the
school, for
continuum.
those-
And
okay.
even like, you
That's
know,
great.
as we continue to progress, looking at our younger kids and looking at those, those skills that are going to build for students who might be participating in these programs at the high school
And
level.
just to add to that too, which was a great point when we had our transition meetings, which was a couple of weeks ago during one of the PD afternoon, or the session afternoons. And it was great because our middle school had a specific time to meet with our high school teachers. And for what Amy's referring to, a lot of that is with our sort of our low incident programs at the middle school. And we know that there was a standstill a little bit during COVID, and then the kids returning. So this allowed, and that whole conversation, I think it came alive during that afternoon, that really brought up some things so that prior to even getting to the high school, some of these other opportunities at the middle level as well.
So and I'll just kind of wrap that up. So basically our high school teachers are sharing resources with our middle school teachers so that they have, some of the materials and the things that will help them sort of prepare as they transition to the high school.
And I just am going to make a plug for the program in that, 7 years ago, our programs weren't as comprehensive. We brought back programs and developed programs over the course of the 8 years.
yeah.
I've been
Students.
here. Right, and we brought back a lot of out of
Yes.
district students because we believe, well, number one, we want them with us and in our communities. But I think these partnerships, when we sat in our special ed plan meetings and came up and hatched the idea, and Shane and his team said, well, we can do this better than anyone else. And obviously that has come to fruition. But their partnerships are also profitable. And I want us to be able to, some of those partnerships yield profit for the district. And that sort of, they have worked in that whole paycheck kind of program, and we're hoping, administratively, to use the profit those kids are making to fund the program. Like, we have so many more kids now, I've been harping about a second van. Because we have so many job sites that we need the van.
Make a motion.
Yeah. So we wrote a grant this year. Sadly, we did not get it. It was devastating.
Yeah.
The one I really wanted, I didn't get. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to be as strategic about, because, Shane is working with students from our autistic support, our MDS, our life skills classes, but now in the new equation, things like mentorships, job shadowing, apprenticeships are also part of the equation for some of our students who need a pathway to graduation, who need to do those. And there is just no conceivable way that Shane can take on an entire learning support population in addition to the students he already services in the 18 to 21 program. So you saw in our comprehensive plan that we're looking to make some strategic decisions about how do we support students with learning disabilities achieve the same type of opportunities so they're set up for success in graduation in that area too. So I want everyone to know that, that our partnership with all balls
racing, yeah.
is an amazing, it is amazing partnership. The kids do amazing work. Part of the high school, which, we're trying to get new tables and things for them. Those kids are in there doing awesome things.
Yeah, we go there every week and pick work up and bring it back to the school. And that way, everyone can do it. So someone in life skills, so a ninth grader in life skills class can practice it. So it's a lot of like packaging and relabeling, and they provided us with all these tools and presses and stuff, so we can press bearings in. So
So we have that
basically,
stuff here. They gave us that stuff to have
they gave it to
here.
us, yes.
Yeah.
So we have it in our room there, and
We're trying to
it's
expand.
basically it's like they sell parts for ATVs, motorcycles, and dirt bikes and all that stuff. So with COVID hitting, everyone wanted to renovate their vehicles, I guess. So
Oh, yeah.
And I love what you just said with that whole piece about what they're doing, because they really are pulling in all of our students and providing, work for students based on their individual ability. So you might have some kids that are out, for however long for the work programs at Logan's Heroes, but, you have other students who are kind of working in house.
yeah, there is something for almost any level of student at the high school. Regardless of what your skill set is, you can find something that someone could do. So, I mean, they gave us heat sealers, we're bagging and heat sealing. So I have some students that they love to stuff these bags. Like, they're little, like, C-clips. And it's like therapeutic for them to do that, you know?
Well,
And
yeah,
I have
because
some
of
that
the-
can run the heat sealer, and then I have some that their job, they just want to label. So there's enough that, you know, almost any student at the high school can find something that they can be successful at doing. And a lot of this will translate to what some of them will do after high school, because some of them may go to, you know, an environment where that might be their job, that might be their pathway, is
Yeah.
that you're going to go to one of these businesses during the day, and that's what you're going to do, and you'll get paid by how much you complete. So it's kind of like a little, you know, practice for what some of them may have to do when they're
And what, it's like $3,000 a month the kids make?
on a light day, yeah, on a light month, yeah.
A month.
It's crazy. Yeah,
I mean, the
they're
program
very-
generally, with their partnerships, like $30,000 a year.
Yes, yeah.
And just
Yeah.
to sort of add to that, because there is, and I want to make it so that it is sort of clear, we talk about a level 1, level 2 really briefly. I just kind of pulled this up, and how that doesn't have Shane's piece in there, even though that high school team works ridiculously as a team unit, and they just support each other. It's crazy how supportive they are. But this is what we're sort of talking about, the level 1, and it's those programs. So it's our high school life skills, it's our AS programs there and the MDS. So you don't just come to 9th grade or 10th grade and you just sort of, boom, you get it. There's a whole process of learning, the soft skills, all of those pieces, and a lot of that will occur prior to them then entering into like Shane's program, where they're actually, it's like that next step, level 2. Even though they get to do a lot of the in-house things from the level 1 that we brought up. So I just wanted to sort of make it a little clear, like they don't just jump into this. And then the only other thing that I will say is obviously, before Shane jumps into like the future next year, is there is a goal for our students, and when we look, like when they graduate or when they age out. And I will say, we absolutely do, and it's been through the support of the work program, have some students who have graduated and exited and been hired, you know, possibly by the Upper Park School District. So there is like some really amazing positive things that do come out of it.
And all of these things also fit nice into the transition grid. If you know, as you were looking at the slides, the cleaning, you know, just the different things fit into all of those different goals, the 3 goals that are in the transition grid.
So, and one important thing that they didn't talk about was a lot of school districts, when COVID hit, had to stop transition programming, especially when they were community-oriented or site-based.
Right.
Shane, did you stop?
No, we only had to stop a couple places, but for the most part,
So
we were good.
And that was one of the things that Upper Park was one of the few districts that in our conversations and talking, we're still going, we're still doing, because a lot of it was developed. You know, a lot of the controls were internally. So we might have to change a little bit, but we're not going to stop. We're going to keep bringing them in, we're going to keep doing these things. A lot of school districts, a lot of parent groups, if you talk to them, there was stoppages in programming. If you were in a hospital setting, you stopped. If you were in, you know, a residential setting, a nursing home, you stopped. Because of the diversification and the way the program was set up and structured, they kept on going, they kept on moving, the kids kept on, you know, meeting
And
those
those-
transitions.
They were in-house, so those teachers are low-incident teachers. We're physically in the buildings. If you remember, when a lot of our kids didn't transition back to a hybrid in January, they were there. Every morning, the kids were there, you know, obviously where the parents were okay with it, and they didn't stop.
Yeah, because it would have been really hard to, I mean, we were able to be creative, like when we had a short shutdown. The nice thing is with some of this work, we would just take it to their houses. So a kid would get a press and 1,000 of these things. And I would just be like, email me when it's done and we'll swing by. So we were just dropping stuff off at like down Main Street at people's houses. And I'd be like, just let me know when this is done. So the parents were like happy because they, you know, they wanted to see, you know, so they didn't access curriculum maybe through the computers, but they accessed it through deliveries on their porch. So,
That's phenomenal.
Shane,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
happening next year?
All right, so for next year then, so like the next way to like really try to polish things up is, so we're going to be incorporating kind of like an apartment living type of aspect, because like the independent living component is a little hard to sometimes do. Sometimes you kind of, have to get this information from the families, like what can someone do at home? And, if I asked you, your own children, like, can they brush their teeth independently? You may say yes, but in reality, like, do you have to remind them, like, hey, go brush your teeth? So technically they can't. So this way we'll be able to see it ourselves. So in our MDS room, it's already partially like, it already has like a kitchen, it has a bathroom, it has a washer and dryer. So all we're going to do is just kind of put like a bed and some, maybe a little bit of furniture in there, and it'll be a total, one-room apartment that we're going to have students from the different programs, all those programs up there are going to cycle through, similar to like an elective almost, So they're going to cycle through this room to be able to really work on some independent living skills that we can put our eyes on, what they can and can't do. Bed making, cleaning, running the dishwasher, running the clothes washer, all that kind of stuff. So,
Will they live in there?
well, parents may pay for the weekends, but
During the day.
yeah, during the day. So they'll cycle through like a class. Yeah, you'll cycle through like a
Yeah,
class.
we'll get it done.
So it's an already existing classroom at the high school that won't need to be utilized the way it is this school year.
Okay.
And so some of those things that we're talking about are already in that room, and then other things will be, other items will be added.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be part of their curriculum.
Okay.
Right, so we'll hit on each part of the grid,
Yeah.
all in-house, so we can have our eyes on it, the entire process.
Do you have any questions with, like, anything sort of so far, or with?
Yeah, it's, oh, go ahead.
No, I was
So
gonna say,
level
Judy.
1 and level 2. That's the list. Sometimes I read them off fast in my head.
What's
No,
Adopt a
go back to
House?
This one?
that one. No, go back to one.
This one?
One
This
more.
one?
That
Judy
one.
got
What's that?
about Adopt a House.
What's
Oh,
Adopt
Adopt a House is, that's a really cool one. So we reached out to people and just said, like, there's someone like maybe through church or something, like an elderly person that needs help. So we have this, there's a house across from the 4-5, elderly woman that reached out to us, and so we go over there. All she does is email when she wants something done, and we'll just go over and do something like maybe like yard work, or if she needs something moved. We have another one that we go to where this woman.
That's huge. Can we get that like on our social media? That is like a great.
So yeah,
Oh my God.
so there's like 3 or 4 of those right now that we do, and it's just like as they need it, they'll just reach out to me and just say,
Yeah.
hey, and we'll work something out. I mean, they talk to us like we're a business. There's a house in Red Hill that, under for circumstances, they can't really do some of the yard work, so we're doing some of the yard work for them right now. So, I mean, as long as you're within a close proximity, we can swing by and get it. Again, that comes back to our vans. That vans makes all the flexibility in the world, because we can spontaneously be like, oh, you know what, it's nice out, we can do, like, so we have a schedule, but we can always kind of be a little flexible, like, oh, we can do 2 things at once here. We're going to swing by and do this, and then we're going to go to here. So the vans definitely are a key in allowing some flexibility and that kind of stuff.
And you only have one van, right?
Yeah.
We use 2.
2.
Right, so there's one that's like our specific and one that's not.
Unless there's a sporting event.
Right, so like, if there's like,
Which is a lot.
So we have
it's frequent.
It'll go unnamed, but when
Yes,
there's a
right.
sporting event.
They're all documented, but yes. Yeah.
Unfortunately, our students in the program lose out to sports. So I am very bothersome about using some of the funds from
Right.
what the kids have earned, quite frankly, to buy a van for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you establish it, like, for the most part, obviously district mail, if we don't do it, no one does it. So if there's no van, it's not gonna happen. But like a couple of them, if they're relying on us to show up, let's say like Liberty Retail in Quakertown, and then I have to say, we don't have a van, so I had to call out, so it's not ideal. Most of them are very understanding, and I can always find something for us to be able to do for replacement, so students aren't sitting around, like we have other things that can fill in, but, in the ideal world, it's just not good to, it'd be like saying, you can't work in the wood shop today because, we're shutting off power, I don't know. So it is kind of a little bit of a limiting factor for us, and I understand, we only have we have 2 for the whole district, so, there's other independent living, like middle school needs to use it. There's special ed teachers at middle school that need to do trips into the community because they're obligated for their programming.
They work at it.
So they'll just reach out to me and say, could this work? And then I'll look at our board and be like, Monday first thing would work. You can use one then. So that's kind of how we do it.
And you guys have a nice, relationship to be able to do that, but boy, would it be nice to have another van, because it really could support
Yeah, that's a title on my email at the bottom, van coordinator, so sports reaches out to me, clubs reach out, everyone reaches out, like, when's the van available? So,
It's not.
yeah,
When are you back, Shay?
yeah, right, so.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. How do the businesses and groups in the community find out about this to become a partner?
That's a good question. So, again, the partnership with the chamber, helped us out with probably 2 of them. So All Balls and Logan's Heroes came about from going through the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
So, but a lot of them is I go to a lot of chamber events, and they've allowed me to speak, just kind of like how we're talking about it here. It's kind of like a plug.
Yeah.
If you're coming to the superintendent thing on the 29th, I'll be there talking with some of my students. So it's just a lot of networking and just getting out and talking to things. I go to the job fairs, career fairs, and just talk to people and just, see, kind of pick their brain about things and, what would you think about having some students come out?
Right.
But
it's mostly you're doing the legwork.
Yes. And I'm local, so that helps, I don't grow up right over the border, so I know some of these places.
Community, yeah.
So it's easier to know where, I know where all these places are and just to reach out and try to then through word of mouth, then it kind of starts to grow and build and build.
Yeah, the Perk Up Committee through Chamber of Commerce, is that?
Yes, it's very, very beneficial because they always allow us to, speak or talk or set up a little booth or something like that, just to kind of advertise.
And then the other businesses talk about how great the students are.
Yes,
And
from,
then-
Justin from US Tape, after we started working with him, he's raving about it on these things, He's saying, I don't know why people don't utilize your services. COVID helped us a ton. The workforce shortage helped us a ton because we were able to actually kind of come in and help some businesses out,
Right.
So that was beneficial. So a lot of people are a little more open to it because they needed more help. So they opened up their eyes a little bit to oh, this is a really good resource to utilize, so.
I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, but I did.
Oh, yeah.
You answered almost all of my questions in your presentation, which is why I kind of figured you would. But I'm curious about 2 things with regards to the work program. One is, how is the decision made that a student stays from 18 to 21? Because obviously that's not offered to every one of our,
Right.
life skills students or whatever. Or maybe it is offered
Right.
to every one of our life skills. I don't know. So how's that decision made first? And then how's it, if you start that, do you automatically stay to 21?
No.
Or, how's the decision to exit it?
Right.
How are those?
Right, I have
things?
students that could tell me tomorrow, I'm out, and they're allowed to go. So typically, we usually plan for it, like Ms. Bamford, Ms. Willard, Ms. Purcell, they know early on what families probably are going to stay based on, because you're having conversations from 14 on. So if from age 14, 15, they're talking about what do you see your child doing, and they kind of collaborate as a team, and if they say, I think we're going to be going to a day program, or I think we're going to be doing part-time work, through some kind of supports program. So once we kind of know what the plan is, and everyone feels like this is a good realistic plan, then we'll know. I have some students that leave. They just take their diploma at 18, and they just decide, I'm going to go. I've taken in what I can take in, and I'm going to go. A lot of services do not kick in till they're 21. Like adult services, so sometimes that's a factor. So they'll just keep coming, utilizing our services, knowing that waiver funding and different services that are available to their individual won't start till 21. So if they may say, we don't really have something in place, so we're going to just wait till those services kick in. I've had other students say that they find employment and they're like, we'll always suggest maybe stay with us a little bit more to make sure the employment lasts. And if they get to a certain point and they feel pretty comfortable it's going to last, they leave.
Yeah.
So I've had students say, I'm going to stay. They got a job at Giant, second shift, and they stayed for 2 months, and everyone felt like this job was going to stay. Go on.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of students this year that are going to be aging out. They've reached the limit of 21. And I have one that works at Blomers. He works at Blomers, and then he also works with Brenda in the middle school cafeteria. And he's fantastic, but he has a job. He has 1 more year of eligibility, but he's going to leave. It makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's held a job this long, they love him, and there's no better work experience than a real work experience. We're providing as much as we can to replicate it, but nothing beats an actual job. And paychecks are nice too. So, yes. But yeah, so it's a team decision. I would say majority of them stay, because we have this program. Previously to not having this, I think some were like, what are we gonna stick around for? What are we staying for? So I think now that we have something and they know what it entails, we have more that stay.
Yeah, and that has also supported that 18 to 21 program in bringing some of our kids placed out of district to return to us for that piece, and in their own community, because as Shane said earlier, how beneficial is it for a student that is going to a program or a school that is down in Chester County to be doing, work programs down there when they live here? And so that's helped us too, to bring some of the kids back over the years.
Anybody else have any additional questions?
No, just awesome. It's really cool
I love this program.
how it's grown.
There's nothing like
Shane's
it.
probably
that
sick and
I've
tired of
seen.
hearing it.
No, I could talk for hours on it.
But I mean, it's the truth. I just love this program.
And there aren't, there aren't programs like this in a lot of school districts. So that's just a testament to how hard all of these people have worked to get this in place, and it just keeps building and growing.
And just to, I know we're talking about the program, the good things of it. This is one of the things that we need to shine spotlights on. It's about the good work the district's been doing, because a lot of times we tend to, somebody gets up and they're complaining about this or that. No, but it's like, no, we are doing a lot of amazing things. And this, it sounds like, and Chris, you could probably, hearing you talk tonight about how wonderful this is, which is really great. And it's not something that everybody has, which is also really great. So this is one of the wins that we have going on, and thank you for all your hard work, especially because I know how passionate you are about this, Shane. Everybody, of course, but dude, you've really put in a lot of work on this, which is great, right? You've made it this successful program, which is cool. So it's one of those things I think deserves to be highlighted and mentioned, and and it's great. And who knows, maybe we get a couple more adopted homes out of it or whatever,
Well, we gotta, we're a business, so we have to we can't spread ourselves thin. So I already have.
I got big plans for you, Shane. I got big plans.
Well, there might be two people watching, they're like, how come he's not getting to my house as fast?
We got 6 inches of snow on the
Yeah,
ground.
right, because, well, we're very honest, we'll say, listen, we're pretty booked, and the days are dwindling down, so I can't make any promises.
CDL
Chris has to head out.
So, okay.
Oh, Chris, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Chris.
Nice to see you.
When
They
this
also
Shane,
have-
does any of this
Yeah.
go on through the summer? Or is
Yes, it does. So now through extended school year, previously we didn't have it in
Right.
the past 2 years.
Last summer we did.
Or was it last summer?
Yes.
Last summer, now it is.
Okay,
So
so
it
it's
is a
So the work
continuing.
book 1821 all
Yes,
year.
So
it's a little bit scaled back, but yeah.
The ESY schedule.
Yes,
Yes,
it's,
okay.
and it's for students who qualify for
For
ESY.
ESY.
Yeah.
right.
So you have to qualify for ESY, and you have to have goals related to the work program. But yes, it runs, and like Shane said, it's kind of abbreviated, or because ESY is only
Yeah, it's
9
only
to 12 money
What's
for
this line again?
extended school
Extended.
years.
Okay.
But like last chance, like
Oh.
they'll answer, like, you're still gonna keep coming to the summer. So like last chance is on the list. District meal obviously has to be on the list.
Right.
And just to add, so every student in his program does, just based on the severity of disability, they do automatically qualify
They
for
would all
ESY.
qualify for ESY.
But not all, I would say half do
Not all
it.
the time.
Because some just need a break, and some, they go away on vacation, or they wanna do something, or,
Yeah, ESY is not required.
yeah.
Okay.
So parents can, certainly if they qualify, we have to offer it, but a parent can say, we're going on vacation or whatever. Some students come for 2 weeks and they don't come for the other 2 weeks.
Okay.
But,
But it's cool, it's there if they want.
It is there.
Which is really
yeah,
great.
it's offered.
Well, we won't keep you any longer, but thank you so much.
Oh,
We
thank you.
appreciate
Yeah, thank you.
coming.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yep.
Shane, for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
So, the only other thing we have to talk about is the next meeting, because you said neither one of you are going to be here.
We
Maybe
won't.
Do you have an alternative date that you would
Well,
like?
we can
or-
still run it, because Sarah and Carol will be here. So as long as you're okay knowing that we won't be here.
I'm fine with that.
Thanks for coming.
You won't miss us.
Yeah, I will absolutely miss
It's
you.
not too much that we would not continue.
I'll absolutely miss you, but, you're allowed to have a day off.
And the other question is, are we going to convene in June? Pupil Services historically has not.
We have not, that is true.
I like tradition.
I'm just.
Unless, of course, we need, I mean, it's up to you, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna
I don't
bring
really
forward
think- I
most of
mean,
the stuff we
I-
need next month. so
I
we
think
should
in
be
May,
Okay.
we usually kind of do a little wrap up where we talk about like, you know, the state of the
Yeah.
union type thing where we
Yeah.
say, this is what we did, this is what we're looking forward to for next year. And I
Yeah.
believe the last several years we've done that in May.
Yeah, and.
And I'm sure
my-
Carol can handle it.
Right, and my thoughts are to revisit, because we will have presented the comprehensive plan.
Yep.
So just review that and the special education plan, which are both
Both
going
are
to
on
be
the
sitting
May.
out there, so it's a nice place for us to have that conversation.
Yeah, and we're doing the full board presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, in just a couple of weeks you're doing,
Yeah,
so.
Right.
Yeah, I think that that's fine. A quick wrap up in May and then June and July off and pick back up August or September, depending upon
As
what
one
your
group.
schedules look.
yeah,
And it'll be
As
one
one
group
group.
by then.
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
Yep.
right.
All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you guys for staying a little extra.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you, it'll be.
Yeah, it is.
It was a good one for finally getting my during.
Well, I'm looking forward to it and not looking.
We'll see how it grows.
Even in the short time that I've been in the school
About what they
district.
do and stuff. And it wasn't.
But I remember like being at the high school one time and he was coming back and this is like when we first got on the board like 7 years ago.
Yeah, it continues to evolve.
Yeah.
I described the kids' show, it's tremendous.